Welcome to the latest Seahawks Draft Blog live stream. The three of us are here. It's been a while since the three of us have been together on a stream, but it's June the 1st, and we thought we'd get together. There's a couple of things I wanted to talk to the fellas about with regards to the Seahawks. So if you want to join in the debate that we're going to have, send in a super chat. We will guarantee to put those points or questions on the screen if you send us a super chat in. Just let us know what you think. If you've got a thing to chime in on in this debate, I'm going to warn you now that there is going to be some complaining in this from me in this stream, fellas. So are you ready for that, Robbie?
I'm ready. Bring it.
So the first thing I wanted to talk about was, I don't know if you've seen this latest piece. There's been a bit of talk. I know Sheil Kapadia gave the Seahawks like a C+ grade for their off season last week, and I've seen this from Ben Solak this week, and this is kind of what I wanted to focus on the most. He wrote in a piece that was like 100 days to the season beginning, and he like wrote 100 things about the season. And this is what he wrote about the Seahawks. He labeled them as one of the 3 least improved teams. He says the Seahawks offseason's got a ton of coverage, so we don't need to rehash it. But when Geno Smith, Tyler Lockett, and DK Metcalf leave the building for Sam Darnold, Cooper Kupp, and Marquez Valdes-Scantling, you've downgraded in my eyes. The offensive line still has big question marks, even if rookie Gray Zabel plays well. Coach Mike McDonald worked wonders with this defense last season, and he must do so again this year. So the first thing I was going to do before I give you my opinion on that, Robbie, do you think that is a fair or unfair review of Seattle's offseason?
Yeah, so I saw this as well, and then I saw I think it's Bob Wyman, his show, they were talking about it as well, and lots of different things. And I think it's easy to, there's 2 things that can happen here. One, it's really easy to put on your kind of your homer glasses, and you're just like, oh, I'm a Seahawks fan, so we're going to be amazing, and you can see the bright side of it and all the good things. And I think it's realistic to think, if you look on paper, Sam Darnold versus Geno Smith, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett versus Cooper Kupp, and Marquez Valdes-Scantling, you can see why people may think this may not be as good of a team. But I think the realistic aspect of it is it really falls on Sam Darnold and how well does he play in the Clint Kubiak system. And I think that's where kind of there is an unknown. This could be a complete dumpster fire and he plays terrible. And it's very real possibility. We could be sitting here next season being like, that was a terrible choice and we probably should have kept Geno, or whatever the case might be. And that's a realistic possibility. But there's also the realistic possibility that this team could surprise a lot of people. I've definitely taken the over on the 7.5 that Vegas gave us on for wins. I put a couple hundred down on that and said, let's go. I will take I'll take the over on that every day. I think that this is a possibility. I think the defense is improved. The offense is a huge question mark. So I can see why people think so. I'm not convinced that this is going to be any worse. If anything, I think we're probably going to be right around the same, like 9-10 wins. I don't see any big reason why we couldn't win that many games, even if Sam Darnold plays mediocre.
Adam, what is your view on what Ben Solak had to say about the offseason?
Yeah, I think ultimately it's an argument made in bad faith, because it's predominantly based around and predicated on one of the presidents of the Geno Smith fan club just having to get another jab in against the Seahawks for daring to get rid of their darling quarterback. And I don't want to be too harsh. Like, everyone's allowed their opinion on any player that they want, but I don't think it's fair to say that the Seahawks might be worse because they got rid of Geno Smith. I think they might be worse because Sam Darnold doesn't perform to a level that we need to. But I think those 2 arguments need to be separated out. I think they're borderline mutually exclusive, because Geno was ultimately regressing in the general scheme of things over the past 3 years as the Seahawks starter. But there was this just mystique built up around him from a group of people who I think were probably some of the leaders of our unenjoyment of last season, because you just felt that you were just hammering at you all the time about how good he was. And albeit there were the other side of the argument that hammered against you how bad he was. But this just feels like an opportunity to give the Seahawks a kicking because they dared to get rid of Geno Smith more than anything else about Sam Darnold. And the idea that, Mike McDonald worked wonders with the defense and has to do that again. I mean, that's literally his job. Why wouldn't he do that again? He did it last year with probably a slightly worse group of players, and the expectation and the enormous salary that he rightly garners will be based on the fact that he'll do the same thing again, because that's what he's been paid to do. So it just feels like one of those things that, it just gives the Geno Hive their last sort of chance to get a quick jab in against the Seahawks. Now, I want to talk about Sam Darnold tonight. I have my doubts about him, but yeah, I just don't feel like this is an argument that's made in good faith and sort of is honestly being reported.
We'll do a bit on Sam Darnold after we've talked a bit more about this, because I think I wanted to say kind of what you've said there. I think this is an example of somebody, and look, Ben Solak, I think, really came to everybody's attention as someone who is very, very good at sitting down with tape and explaining why something had happened. And there were various examples before he joined ESPN where one of his I don't follow him on Twitter, but one of these videos would pop up on X or Twitter, and he would have a breakdown of why something happened, and you came away genuinely feeling like you learned something. Like, I'm not an X's and O's person, so when there is somebody out there who can explain why something has happened, it's really useful to watch it sometimes. And he's very good at that. Like, he doesn't misspeak at all. He doesn't and ah when he's doing those videos. He seems to just, it's almost as if he's understands a language that some of us only know, like how to say bonjour and bière, s'il vous plaît. Like, that we don't really know anything more than that, and he knows a lot more of it, and he explains it, and I thought that was excellent. But for whatever reason, he's ended up at ESPN because ESPN just seems to be collecting anybody with a Twitter following at the moment. I mean, for Matt Miller to be their sort of, with Mel Kiper, main draft analyst, I find bizarre when they had someone as like Tom McShay there previously. They seem to be collecting anybody who has any kind of clout on social media and adding them to their arsenal. And rather than have him do what he's good at, he seems to be doing a lot of this, which, as you mentioned, is sort of picking a hobby horse topic and really sort of going over it. And I don't really understand. I would love somebody to explain to me why Geno Smith has become the poster child of. Is it because it's too easy to get behind like the top quarterbacks? Like, it'd be too easy to celebrate Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, and it'd be too easy to criticize players who are not very good. So what you really need to do is find somebody who's in that middle ground and try and paint them into something exceptional that you see that nobody else does. Because when I look at Geno Smith clearly had some excellent games this Seahawks last year, and he won Seattle games. But he also had some games where he was quite poor, and there were a couple of games where he had a major contribution towards them losing. And that is a trend that had gone on from the year prior as well. So you look at his stats, the argument he makes is that swapping Geno Smith for Sam Darnold is a massive issue. Well, Geno Smith had 21 touchdowns and 15 interceptions last season, and that's mainly because of 4 touchdowns in a final game against the Rams backups. Like, going into that game, it was 17 and 15. In the year prior, it was 20 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. His quarterback rating was 92 and 93 in the last 2 years. So nothing spectacular whatsoever. His PFF grade, very similar to Sam Darnold's, all of that stuff. There's very little reason to think that this is some major downgrade. When you actually look at Sam Darnold's stats, he, to have 35 touchdowns and 12 interceptions and a 102.5 quarterback rating is something I think deserves to be credited. And aren't they just falling into the trap here a little bit? If Geno Smith had one great year with, half a good year with Seattle, and then a not so great follow-up to that, and then 2 quite average years. At the very least, if Sam Darnold's 2024 season was Geno Smith's 2022, is at the very least, shouldn't he be able to sort of do what Geno Smith's done for the last 2 years, especially with an offensive coordinator who he's worked with before? It's a similar system that he had in Minnesota. I just don't understand, Robbie, why people think there's this huge drop-off. I think if nothing else, if this is the worst case scenario, that you're probably just going to have a continuation of what you've had for the last 2 years. Like, if Sam Darnold had a 20 touchdown, 9 interception season like Geno Smith in 2023, I can't say I'd be that surprised. But if that happens, are people going to criticize Sam Darnold and hammer Sam Darnold and say it was a huge mistake to move on from Geno Smith? Because essentially what you'd be getting is Geno Smith production for the last 2 years.
Yeah, I think a lot of these writers too, they don't really take in consideration like the long-term play here as well. Like you start thinking about like we've seen what Geno Smith. We all agree that I mean, at least us here in the room, the three of us. I don't know if everyone agrees, but the three of us agree that we didn't think Geno Smith was gonna get us to the Super Bowl, and clearly John Snyder didn't either. They made an offer to Geno what they thought was fair. His camp didn't like it, turned it down. They made it very clear that they weren't gonna go any higher. They moved on. We got some draft picks for it. I think if you're looking at in terms of building, we're still building the roster, and what we had to do is we kind of got rid of kind of two headaches and one stone, right? I mean, as great as DK was, sometimes he was also frustrating as all could be out, and losing Tyler Lockett, we were never going to pay him that. Nothing against Tyler Lockett. We all love Tyler Lockett. Great player, great person. And, it would have been cool to see him come back maybe on a cheaper deal, but that just wasn't what happened. And so we had to move on. And I think there's a good reason for that. And I think it's part of that long-term build. We could have been stuck in this mediocre, oh, well, now we're paying Geno a certain amount of money for so long. And now we're going to try to win the Super Bowl or win the Super Bowl window with him. And I think we're building more towards getting towards a Super Bowl roster by moving on. And I don't think they really can take that consideration. If you're looking at maybe just terms of last year to this year, player versus player on paper, but someone said it in the comments earlier, wait until 5 games in. I mean, and I don't think anybody thought we were going to be as good as we were last year either. So I'm okay with it.
Yeah. And the other thing is he mentions that they've swapped DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett for Cooper Kupp and Marquez Valdes-Scantling. So to look at that point as well, and again, this isn't looking at it totally through a Seahawks lens here and being very defensive about something. But, with the greatest respect to Tyler Lockett, this is a player who clearly was not the Tyler Lockett that we've all came to love in Seattle last season. He was not as effective as he had been in the past. This Seahawks moved on, and it took him a long time to find a new team. And there was not, by the looks of things, a huge demand for his services. I'm trying to find when he actually signed. So he ended up signing with the Titans, who had the worst record in the NFL last season. And he joined the Titans, if I get right down to the bottom, on April 23rd. So it's around draft time. So he had a long wait before actually signing with the team. So it's distinctly possible that Tyler Lockett's better days are long gone in the NFL. And then with DK Metcalf, I think we're maybe the idea of DK Metcalf in the national media is still something that maybe we kind of had moved on from and maybe would have moved on from it anyway, even if he'd stayed in Seattle, is that he promises a lot with his physical tools and the way that he looks, but the execution and the consistency simply isn't there. Now, Cooper Kupp, an aging Cooper Kupp, who may also have seen his better days come and go in the NFL, like Tyler Lockett, and Marquez Valdes-Scantling, are not necessarily going to be as good as those two. I think you do have to consider the fact that Elijah Arroyo might have a big impact, and Noah Fant and the tight ends and AJ Barner in this offense. But also, I think it's going to be a very different type of offense, and I think it's going to be a run-heavy offense, and it's going to be run differently, and it may not require sort of 3 receivers. And actually, the way that the Seahawks have tilted away from sort of big name receivers to maybe a more of a style that is physical, run-based, play-action-based, might actually improve the team. Because now they don't have any desperate need. Like, what was happening? Like, after a game where DK Metcalf didn't do anything, it was a story. And then even if he did have a big game, that it'd be a story if Jackson Smith and Jigba didn't get any targets. And you've kind of had that world for a while now where receivers have expected to get their catches. You're not going to have that anymore. So I don't think you can just look at the receiver room and go, well, that's a downgrade. I think maybe the Seahawks might actually have upgraded their offense by changing the style of the offense, Adam, through personnel.
Yeah, it's also pretty reductive, and I'm sure Ben knows this and is just sort of writing articles to to get people hooked in. That, you know, players going out, if their replacements don't perform well, doesn't mean you were wrong to get rid of the players in the first place. Valdez-Scantling having a poor season isn't going to make the Seahawks decision to get rid of DK Metcalf the wrong one, when you bear in mind what, you know, they would have had to give up to keep him. Same as Geno Smith. Sam Darnold not having a good season isn't going to make the decision to get rid of Geno Smith wrong, unless he, maybe he turns into an absolute, you know, all-pro Super Bowl winning quarterback. I don't think it's going to happen, but you know, one doesn't have to lead to the other. And I just reject the whole premise of the article in the sense of A plus B plus C replacing 1, 2, 3 is a net negative. I just think it's lazy and just sort of like it's like you're trying to attract the narrative as opposed to actually analyzing the situation.
But why is that, Robbie? I come back to the point I was making earlier. Why is it that Geno Smith has become this player that people almost feel the need to rally around, you know, to sort of force positivity in his direction? You know, what has he actually done to warrant this? Is it just because he's got a big arm? Is it the career arc that he's been on? Is just people have fallen in love with it?
It's but even the story.
But you're right. It probably is the story. But, you know, this is, I mean, do some digging around. You know, this is a guy who, you know, he still had some average games. You know, people credit him for coming out in a press conference and taking the it's on me. But yeah, if you actually dig around a little bit, you find out that he was quite happy to go into that locker room and call out some teammates in a very public way. And that it didn't, maybe DK and Geno Smith didn't have the best relationship partly because of that and stuff like this. Like, do some homework. Like, what I don't think this idea that, well, he had a horrible time with the Jets, and then in his 30s he's turned his career around. Great. He's had one good season. He hasn't won a playoff game. I know there's reasons why, like, Seattle's offensive line and Ryan Grubb were awful last year. Yeah. And I don't think many quarterbacks would have thrived in that. But I also don't think if Seattle had had Clint Kubiak last year, that Geno Smith would be sat here now with a 5-year contract extension. I'm not having it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, so I had to just pull up just because I wanted to do this. But in general, if you're a writer and you're not, you know, there's 32 teams and they're probably not covering them all that well. They look at Geno Smith's stats. 2022, he had a 69.8% completion rate. He threw 4,200 yards, 30 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and it had 100.9 QBR. Or quarterback rating. Okay, it sounds pretty dang good, right? So, and then 2023, 64% completions went down, still threw 3,600 yards, 20 touchdowns, only 9 interceptions, and a 92.1. This last year, 70% completion, 4,300 yards, 21 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, 93. So they think in terms of like a player, you've still got somebody who's like on terms with like maybe a younger Kirk Cousins or someone around that age who's like, you know, still a good player that fit for your team and came out, you got him for cheap for so long and he's been there for your team. So if they're looking at stats, just stats alone, they can see, well, what are you doing? Now you got Sam Darnold, who, yeah, he had a great season last year, but has been a train wreck since before, right? I just think in terms of that, maybe that's why. Plus it's the story. Everyone likes the idea of, you know, a comeback story, someone like Geno Smith. But again, I know someone just wrote it. He's 36. You went to a younger quarterback who had statistically the same stats last year as Geno Smith, if not maybe a little better, and he has an opportunity to improve at your team. You still drafted a quarterback. His contract isn't that bad. You can get out of it after 1 year. And I really like what both of you guys were talking about. I didn't get to chime in on this. Like, you got to take into consideration the running backs as well. How much different is this going to be? Last year, yeah, I know Kenneth Walker was hurt a lot. You know, but I mean, how much better is he going to be with Zach Charbonnet, Kenny McIntosh, Damian Martinez? You throw those guys in the mix, the running back group is going to be a hell of a lot better than they were last year. A ton better. Yeah, now the offensive line, I heard some of the complaints. Well, you only got a rookie guard. You didn't do much at center. You know, what's the stats here at the right guard? Like, what's going to happen there? Can your tackles play, you know, all season? Are they going to get hurt? There's still some question marks. I'm not saying there's not, but to go on the mindset that this team is absolutely horribly better or worse off, I think is crazy. Plus, we added a running back or a fullback. This was the last time we added a fullback to the team.
Exactly.
And he's got a great first name.
He does, Robert. You're right. Yeah, and I hear it because shortened to an even better name. But the the great thing about this offense that, and someone has brought this up in the comments, and I think this is a good point, that I think, and it won't be a fair comparison. I don't think at any point is it going to be fair unless obviously Geno Smith performs brilliantly and Sam Darnold is awful. I don't think it's going to be fair to compare the two, because I think Sam Darnold's walking into a situation this year which is going to be 20 times better than the one that Geno Smith had last year with Grubb and Huff. By all accounts, there's more and more coming out in the local media now as to how bad it was with Grubb. And I think the fact that they will make life easier for Darnold in this offense. I don't think they're going to ask that much of him, even to the point that the center is going to do a lot of the protection calls in Kubiak's offense. That's just the thing that he does. You take that off the quarterback's plate. I think they're going to put him in favorable situations. The way that they block up front is going to help the offensive line and the quarterback. The running back is going to be much more of a focal point than it was. And I suspect that even if the running game isn't elite, it will be better. I mean, it couldn't be any worse, but it'll probably be decent, even if it's not amazing. So I think everything's going to be there to enable Sam Darnold to have a decent season, which will make this all a bit of a moot point. And I think John Schneider's been itching to go and get his guy. And I'm not saying that Sam Darnold is his guy in quotes forever, but he's his guy for this year. And they're going to take a look at him. And I'm intrigued to see what it is. Now, to go on to Darnold, Adam, and you said you wanted to talk about him, I think there are some reservations there. I think when you watch his tape, I've watched I kind of on and off since he signed. Like, his tape at USC, which I did go back and watch, was way better than I remembered. But we haven't seen that player in the NFL. Like the creative, dynamic, no, yes kind of plays that he would make for USC hasn't really happened. He's been at his best when he's been asked to do as little as possible, really, and just get the ball out and on time. And that's been the basis of his success, I think, last year. And I think the thing that when I was watching that is, that's fine until you have to press. That's fine until you get punched in the mouth and you have to work around it. And I think that's part of what went wrong at the end of last season with those two big games where things unraveled for the Vikings and they lost the playoffs and they lost the game against the Lions, was that all of a sudden things worked, the timing wasn't there, and he didn't improvise and he couldn't make things happen when everything else was falling apart. And I think that's part, I expect that might be the issue, Adam. The next season, if the Seahawks can stay on time, if the offense can function, if they can be ticking along nicely, I think Sam Darnold will do well and will have a decent season. But there's going to be a game or games potentially at the end of the season where maybe things go a little bit wrong, or that you play a good team and they get after you. And the success or failure of this move or his tenure will be whether he can go back to a bit of that USC stuff where he can still make things happen off script. Because I don't think we've seen enough of that of him in the NFL.
Yeah, look, I think we can probably categorize the people that set the odds in Vegas as no mugs. Like they don't often get an awful lot wrong. And so you're thinking 7.5 wins seems very low. There must be a reason for that. And as far as I can tell you, I'm thinking about it. The only thing I can think of is that when it starts to go wrong for Darnold, he doesn't often show a great amount of evidence that he can wrestle it back and get back. Forget even like make something happen. He strikes me as the kind of guy that struggles to even get back on any schedule. And when it starts to unravel, it kind of happens in a pretty ugly manner. Now, that in general has happened on a game-to-game basis. What concerns me is that if the season starts to go wrong and stuff, is he the kind of guy that can stand up there on Tuesday, Wednesday press conferences, take a few barbs from journalists, and then go out on a Sunday and sort of get back to a level? Like, for all the issues we had with Geno Smith, one thing I do respect him for was that he was quite able to shake off a poor performance and sort of get going again and perform better the next week. My worry about Darnold and where I feel like perhaps this low line is being set is that there's a concern about Darnold that if it starts to go wrong, what happens then? And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, because I do wonder if, he's our quarterback now, and you generally like to look favorably upon the guys that play for your team. But I just wonder if we've spent enough time as a collective discussing what is going to happen if this guy kind of has a bit of a Case Keenum arc has had his one great year, and then I'm not expecting sort of that level, and then it kind of he's not able to put a good second year after the perceived bounce back year that he had last season.
A Keenum year could happen. I mean, it's not worth ruling it out completely because, I mean, look, Sam Darnold was the third overall pick, and Case Keenum was I think an undrafted free agent. So that there may be a bit more to the flukiness of a quarterback of Keenum's limited physical talent doing that compared to Darnold. But there has to be a chance that could happen. That really he does come out of that Viking system and actually is not that great. And I don't think it's totally out of the question that happens. I just think that I can't remember who the Denver coach was when Case Keenum was there, but I think it was somebody unremarkable as there was their offensive play caller. I just got a feeling that Clint Kubiak's too good for that. That his staff is going to be too good, and that they will not allow that to happen to that extent. Even if he has a middling season, it won't be an awful season. But what do you reckon, Robbie? Adam's raised a point there. Has there been enough time? I think most people are kind of just sort of in that wait and see mode. But I actually prefer this world where no one kind of knows what's going to happen with Darnold. Everyone's kind of open-minded. Everyone's waiting to see what happens versus Geno Wars, where you've got like everybody's made their mind up already and is just constantly arguing about it on Twitter.
Yeah, I really like being the underdog. I really like, being in the fold where like no one really is giving you a lot of credit and thinks that this is not going to be a very good team. I enjoyed that aspect, and I love shutting people up, right, and going out there and watching them do it. So I hope that Sam Darnold succeeds. I think most Seahawks fans obviously want him to succeed. And someone made a really good point. I don't know where it was at, but they said, that he's a SoCal kid, yeah, and teammates seem to love him, and that's great. I mean, that's what you want. You want teammates to love him, follow his lead, and his contract is way better, as someone had rightly pointed out in the comments there. So I just think this is a good move. I'm happy to move on. I think it was time. I think this is a good time for John Snyder to do that. And I feel like this is, again, as I'm just going to say it again, I feel like this is part of that building process to get the team that we really want. And maybe we don't have the quarterback. Maybe it is Jalen Milroe later on down the future. Who knows? But I know right now that we're going to with Sam Darnold as a quarterback, and I like our chances a lot more than we did last year. So
there's one other thing that I really like about last week was, I don't know if you saw any of this, guys. Curtis was kind of sharing pictures of OTAs. And I think these are voluntary, so you don't have to be there. I think I'm right in saying that, or maybe not. Maybe I'm completely wrong. But everybody was there. It seemed like everybody was there. Everyone's competing. The guys who weren't there, like, they seemed to be on the sideline because they were carrying an injury. People like Ernest Jones, who've obviously recovering from an injury. I think he had surgery, didn't he? So he's not likely to be out there. It just seems like everybody's working. Everybody's there. Everyone's in Seattle. I can't remember the last time that was. I think the back end of Pete's sort of final stages, it was, you could kind of guess who was not going to be there every year, and it was a decent chunky number. And then last year, even then, it kind of felt like, well, as I would have expected him to be there. Maybe I can't remember, but my memory is suggesting to me that I was a little bit surprised last year at who wasn't participating. It feels like everybody's sort of driving it forwards now. Everybody's focused. Everybody's pulling in the same direction. And I just think that's a good thing. It just feels like a different attitude to this team. And I think Darnold, like Robbie was mentioning there, he seems to be liked. And he's just getting his head down. And he's just sort of working on it now. And there's not going to be any contract drama with him. And he's not going to be thinking about his next deal. He's got the deal now. It's time to get to work. And that is a marked difference from a year ago, when you had Geno Smith taking himself out of training camp for a couple of days or a day or whatever it was, so that the Seahawks could get a good look at his backup as part of a contract power play. Like, I just, it seems as if this is a team again now. This is a team. They're connected. It feels like Mike McDonald's team, not Pete Carroll's team anymore. And I just think this is good. I'm happy about this, Adam. I'm feeling positive about it. Everything that you said about Sam Darnold makes complete sense to me, and I would not be surprised with any scenario that plays out next season, good, bad, or somewhere in the middle. But I like where they are, and I'm looking forward to watching the team more than I have done in a few seasons.
Yeah, 100% agree. And just for the avoidance of any doubt, it's not that I obviously want Darnold to be bad. I'm just sort of raising it as a June the 1st. Let's talk about some stuff to do with the Seahawks. Where could it go, left or right, up or down? What might happen. There does definitely appear to be a seriousness about the team that's been reinforced that I do think we lost at the back end of the Carroll era, where it just felt, you can't just build the whole ship out of vibes. That at some point there does have to be a level of, this is a proper sports team that are trying to win championships, and that does take a degree of resolve and fight and desire and heart. And it did feel like there was a little bit of that was being lost in the back end of the Pete era. And in a way, a lot of that was one of the reasons that we had so much success in the past. But it did just feel that was being diluted to a point where you just looked like an unserious team.
I wanted to talk a little bit about trades and the prospect of doing something here, and whether you would be in favor of it. Because the Niners have done something, Robbie. They've brought in Bryce Huff. I don't think the compensation has been confirmed for that yet, but I quite like that move because Huff obviously had a very disappointing season in Philadelphia, but seemed to be quite coveted the year before he signed with the Eagles. Apparently, the Seahawks were reportedly showing interest in him as well, and he's had success with Robert Saleh in the past. So I think that could be an interesting move. The Niners, I don't think have had an amazing offseason, but I think that sort of it's a move that makes sense. I'm just really struggling to think what the Seahawks kind of move would be, and I've written about Trey Hendrickson. Curtis has done a great review of that, and there's done a couple of articles that have touched on sort of what the moves they could do and the position that they're in. I'm not against the idea of bringing in Trey Hendrickson, but the more you read about it, like every article that gets written about Trey Hendrickson, Robbie, goes something along the lines of, through an impasse, it's not a great situation. They need to do this. This is what Hendrickson wants. This is what the Bengals, why they haven't signed him yet. Yada, yada, yada. A trade's still really unlikely, though. And it goes that way all the way through. And the problem that the Seahawks have got is that they don't pay players when they trade for them. They've not done that since Percy Harvin. That was 13 years ago. So if they traded for Trey Hendrickson, they'd be trading with him with the idea of paying him next offseason. And his whole point is that he wants to get paid now, that he feels that the money he is on now is not enough. And he does not want to play on $17.6 million or whatever he's on, get injured, and then cost himself a fortune. Like, he wants to get paid now before the season begins in order to move forward. So it's really, really, it's going to be really hard to trade for him unless you're willing to pay him. And he's going to be 31 this year. So I just don't think, I tend to agree that that's just it's too hard to get that deal done unless the season starts, he holds out like Hassan Reddick, it gets ugly, and then you wrangle him out of Cincinnati for like a second round pick like they did with Leonard Williams, and you rent him, and at that point he's got to play because otherwise the season won't toll in his contract and he won't be a free agent. So you get into a point where it becomes so sour between player and the team that they ship him off on a rental, and then you sort of commit yourself like you did with Leonard Williams to paying him in a few weeks' time, and you have him for half a season. I'm just I wasn't a fan of that. Even though Leonard Williams has worked out, I was not a fan of them doing it that way, with giving up a second round pick for that privilege. I'm not that keen on this again, but that feels like the only way that you're going to get Trey Hendrickson, Robbie. So if it's not him, I don't know who it is. Have you got any thoughts on either of those proposals?
Yeah, I think the Hendricks thing, plus Cincinnati is just really hard to deal with, as you pointed out in our last podcast. So, I mean, it's going to be really hard to make a deal with Hendrickson. I think if there's a possibility, it's kind of like that last scenario that you said, that he doesn't sign through camp, doesn't end up playing at all, and then they trade him before he has to play, and then he comes in and he has to play, and then you have an opportunity to negotiate with him then after the end of the season. I think that gets really hairy, though, and it depends on what. But at that point, you also have to imagine the trade compensation is going down, right? It's not going to be a first round, second round pick. You're looking third, maybe even less if it gets to that point. So again, the chips are on your table at that point. I don't know if that is going to happen. I see people commenting, so I'm going to say this too. I saw Brian's thing about Jalen Ramsey and how we should take him over, anybody else, and how it fleeces the Rams at the same time. I don't know if I really want Jalen Ramsey on our team. You know what I mean? Like, say he's 30 years old. Not that that's really old, but I don't know. He just seems like, I don't know. It seems like an arrogant kind of. He's a heck of a player, right? I mean, the talent is there, and if you can fleece the Rams, that's great. But I don't know. I just don't see that's something that we would realistically do. Plus, what are you going to pay him? I don't know. There's too much to that for me. And then the other one I think someone just said it, comments, I'll try to find it. Someone said, oh, never mind, that's unrealistic. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know who else there is. Micah Parsons is the other one, by the way, that people are bringing up, and I don't think that's realistic either. So, I don't know.
I think if you trade for, I'm having a look on over the cap now. So he still has $24 million guaranteed, which I'm guessing. So if they trade post June 1st, the Dolphins would be on the hook. They'd have to give up $6 million, which is the signing bonus. So I'm guessing that you are on the hook for everything else. I can't read over the cap and tell how much this is going to cost the Seahawks, but I do remember that one of the problems for trading with him was that it would cost you an absolute fortune in salary, and that the only way that this was ever going to happen would be if the Dolphins were prepared to eat a lot of that salary, and that's, as of today, they haven't been prepared to do that. I just think that Ramsey, to me, Adam, seems like an absolute pain in the arse. Like somebody who, all this stuff that we're talking about, hey, the team look really connected. The team look like they're all driving in the same direction. The team looks as if they're in a really good place. I don't think inserting someone like Jalen Ramsey into the mix is the next step. I just think that could be counterproductive, and he may well be able to play well. He might have a 75 grade for PFF again, like he had last year. And you might go, okay, that was okay. But to what impact of having him in the locker room, having him around the team? The Dolphins have had him for a year, and they can't wait to get rid of him. Like, it's just not for me.
Well, it's to what impact and also to what end? I mean, this isn't necessarily a team that's looking like they're one cornerback short of having a roster capable of winning a Super Bowl, whereby you could hold your nose and say, look, we're going to get this guy in. He's going to be worth it because he might be the last piece to get us over the line. I mean, I'm thinking someone like Darrelle Revis for the Patriots in 2015 or whatever. He was one of the final pieces they needed. I mean, Ramsey, when he signed for the Rams, for example, was a guy who was a cornerstone piece in helping them get over the line. But if you're going to have Jalen Ramsey for 1 year to get you from 9 to 10 wins, I mean, what are you really benefiting from doing that? It doesn't necessarily track for me in the way in which they're trying to build this roster on a 2 to 3 year sort of building period. I don't know if I'm missing an overall point here, but it just doesn't strike me as something that is a necessary thing for the betterment of the team on a mid to long term basis.
Well, I think part of the problem for me is that they haven't moved on from Tariq Woolen or Reek Woolen or whatever he wants to be called. I think by not moving on from him and by having him now, you're kind of duty bound to sort of let him play out his contracts and see where you are in a year. And you've got him on one side, Devin Witherspoon on the other. You have now you are going to use Emanwari in that kind of versatile nickel move him around kind of position. You are going to want to be multifaceted, and I suppose Jalen Ramsey can do a bit of that. I think he played safety in college. He's kind of moved around a little bit, so I suppose he can be part of that. But if you bring him in, like, is he there? Is he now starting instead of Tariq Woolen? And what's the point of that? Because then Tariq Woolen ain't kicking inside, and you're not really learning anything about Woolen. It just seems to me like I would rather bring in someone like Rasul Douglas on a cheaper deal and just say, go and compete with Woolen for the starting job. Let the mess man win. And then if Woolen wins that job, fine, and you can live with Rasul Douglas being on the bench, or you can move Rasul Douglas. If you trade for Jalen Ramsey, there ain't any competition. Jalen Ramsey is starting. And if they compete and Ramsey, you're probably not going to be able to shift him. And there'd be nothing worse than having Jalen Ramsey on the bench in Seattle. So I think the team that acquires him has to acquire him with the idea of him being their top cornerback. And that's just not what the Seahawks need right now. They probably need an extra depth at corner and competition, but not someone like Jalen Ramsey. But apart from him, Robbie, I've been kind of like looking through and seeing. It does feel a little bit like you'd quite like the Seahawks to do something else. Just to, if is there a move or two that could just take this team a little bit further, just shift things on a little bit. But who could that be?
The only other person that I can think of is TJ Watt. That could be a possibility, I guess, but I can't think of anybody really off the top of my head that's going to come to mind. I think the other thing that you could probably maybe consider is, once training camp comes around, and like maybe some of these veteran guys are going to lose some of their spots to rookies, and teams are wanting to see what they got in the rookie before they just hand it off and say, okay, we're going to go ahead and roll with this guy. Then you see who's available at that time. But at this point, I don't see anybody that you could really go out and get.
It's hard. There's not sort of an obvious that in the past there has been sort of go and get him, and given that I don't really want Ramsey, I don't really know who that could be. Who else they could go and get in that situation. And if there isn't an impact player to sort of throw into the mix and trade for at some point between now and September, if this is it, if this is the roster, Adam, is it how close is it to being really good? Is it close enough to sort of wish there was somebody to go and trade for before the season begins or early on in the season? Or is it just a case of letting this play out and it needs another season? It needs another year of just accepting your lot and come back next off season and give it another go with another draft, another free agency period, another option to maybe trade for some other people who are available next year instead.
Yeah, I think we've had a number of seasons whereby at the start of the year, you look at a big hole on the roster and think, man, I really wish they'd fill that spot. And they have done at times with Sheldon Richardson, Jadeveon Clowney. I don't know about you guys, but I can't see that hole in this roster. Now, it might be the kind of thing that at the trade deadline, you look at something and think, do you know what? If we can just do a little bit here, we might be able to push on. But I can't see that there's a glaring hole in the roster right now that has to be filled with a trade as there have been in previous seasons.
Robbie, I know there's sort of the Steelers are looking for another weapon, aren't they? I'm happy for the Seahawks just roll with what they've got in the weapons and the younger guys and give them an opportunity. It'd be great to have another great edge. I don't see the Steelers trading TJ Watt. I don't see. Somebody mentioned Micah Parsons. I mean, apart from the fact that Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence had a very public spat this offseason, I just don't see the Cowboys trading Micah Parsons. I don't think there's anybody else necessarily. I would have been interested in Bryce Huff if the price was really cheap, to bring him in and sort of just throw him into the mix there. But I can't think of anybody else. Like, unless the Chiefs suddenly decide we cannot get a deal done with Trey Smith, we are going to trade him instead, and then you sort of plug him in at right guard. I can't think, and that there's no indication that that's going to be the case. There's not really anybody else out there. So, would you be content if this is it? Robbie, would you feel pretty comfortable, pretty confident, just going into the season with this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a few pieces. I'd love a different right guard or, see kind of what happens there, but maybe a different center. But I'm pretty comfortable with what they've done this offseason, and I like that they collected a lot more picks in the draft. They got a lot of players. There's a lot of undrafted free. I mean, I think we say this a lot though, but there's a lot of undrafted free agents as well that could possibly make this team and that we have already signed to the roster. So for me, I'm pretty content with where we're at right now. I'm excited to get to the season and see what happens. And I'm pretty content with where we're at.
Let's get into the super chats. This one here from B Calm C Clearly. I'm hoping this is Mad King Sammy Darnold season. Well, yeah, I hope so. And that's definitely what I'll be calling him if he has a great season. I can tell you that now. Thank you for that. Be calm, see clearly. Thank you for that super chat. Jack says Vegas has missed on Seattle 4 out of 10 years by 3 wins. Robbie, you mentioned that you'd stuck a sizable bet on the Seahawks. I did something similar last year on the 7 wins thing. I think even if you don't think the Seahawks are going to have as good a season as you and I predicted when we did the stream about the schedule, 7 wins that's considerably bad. That is much. What is Darnold gets injured level. Drew Lock and Milrow have to start, and neither of them are any good.
I think Drew Lock would get us 7 wins.
7 wins is
I do.
I think it is. It's a very low amount.
Adam, look at the game he had. Adam, look at the game he had against in the Giants when he started. He had like 400 yards, like 5 touchdown passes. I think he could do it. Not saying he can be great.
I think he can win you a game.
I think he'll win. I think he'll get at least 7.
I think he can win you a game if everything else keeps it tight. You can win you a game.
If we have 5 wins when he takes over the role, I think maybe. But if the Seahawks have 1 or 2 wins and he has to start from October, and there's teams can build tape on him sort of November, December, I think you'd be struggling to get to 7 at that point with Drew Lock, I think.
Yeah, I'd be skeptical of it, but I just think 7 wins. You have to judge the team based on who they have, not on what could happen. And 7 wins feels very, very low to me on that. I'd be. The betting for that sort of stuff's not available out here yet, but I would definitely be having some of that as well, Robbie, if it was there. And Martin says we get league average O-line play. The offense could take off with all the weapons it has. I'm hoping Kubiak is going to avoid putting Darnold in bad positions, so he has a chance to get fans on side. Adam, what's your confidence level that they will get average O-line play? Because I think we've gone through a period of people forgetting what Charles Cross actually plays like during the last few months. Like we kind of start last season that you've got to pay him, pay him now. He's amazing, unbelievable, fantastic. Then kind of reality hit. And then the season ends and we've kind of gone back to, well, Charles Cross is a good player, but what about everybody else? And there's very little evidence that Charles Cross is a franchise left tackle, in my opinion. He is an average left tackle who is still lacking strength and power on contact, who is still getting beat in the same way that he did at Mississippi State, which is a concern. Curtis pointed out very, pointedly on Twitter that he looks bigger, and he does. He looks like he's slapped on some weight during this offseason, and he needed to get stronger. He's needed to get stronger for 3 years. But does that impact the quickness and the agility, which is the one thing he does well if he has put on weight? So I don't think that's a given at all. I understand why they've given him the 5th-year option, but he's, I think, under a lot of pressure this year to take the next step. I don't think they can pay him this huge contract that everyone assumes they're going to pay him based on what we've seen so far. Unless, Adam, and you give me your thought on this, they've just decided it's just going to be so hard to replace him that a really good contract for an average left tackle is better than not having a left tackle and having to go and find one again, which they may determine. But I think he's still a question mark. Obviously, Abe Lucas is still a question mark because of his health. Obviously, center's still a question mark. We've not seen Gray's able play in the NFL, and someone's going to play at right guard. So where is your... I think the coaches will get this right, and this will be a much improved O-line. But where are you with the O-line?
I think if you'd asked us at the end of last season, our final stream after the last game, and someone said, I'm from the future, you're going to have 1 new offensive lineman starting next season, I think we'd have all been a little bit somewhere between miffed, uneasy, and disappointed about that, I think. Now, obviously, there is this sort of anyone but Grubb mentality, which is pervaded through the fan base, which is probably not unfair. And I think there is this idea that, Kubiak from Grubb should be a marked increase just from the experience standpoint. It should make us considerably better, and hopefully that filters down to the offensive line as well. But there's nothing that they've done offensively from a staff and even player standpoint that is an absolute guarantee slam dunk that this will definitely make us better. I hope Kubiak does, but he's not got the pedigree of some sort of like wizard offensive coordinator. He's done good jobs in certain situations. We think and we hope that he'll improve us. Charles Cross hopefully will be better. Gray's Able should hopefully make a difference. But I'm not, and this sort of ties in with my Sam Darnold discussion from earlier. I'm not kind of throwing all my eggs into the basket that the offense is definitely going to be better. One would think that for a number of reasons there should be improvements, but I think on a number of levels that if things aren't better, we'll probably be able to realize quite early on why they're not, if that makes sense.
Robbie, any thoughts on the O-line?
Well, we could possibly have two. Adams had one, but remember we did draft that guy out of Iowa, Bryce. I don't know how to say his last name. I'll butcher it. Kettleborn, whatever you say. I don't know how to say it.
I think when you're saying we drafted that guy out of, and I can't remember his name, you're probably not banking on him to be like
the Kansas lineman is Bryce Cabaldew.
Thank you. But remember, this guy he does have athletic traits. He had a high athletic traits. He could be playing right guard. So you could have two. He could take over the right guard position. Just because I don't know how to say his name doesn't mean he's not going to be good, hopefully. But I mean, he was an ideal fit for zone blocking. His athletic traits were off the charts. He was right up there with Gray's Able. So there's a lot of things about him that could be possible that, he didn't play at Kansas, but Gray's Able played at South Dakota State. Like there, you could have two. Again, you're banking on two rookies, so I could see another argument coming here. But I'm just saying there could be a possibility for two, and these guys could be really good. I mean, there's still a possibility that Gray's Able isn't all that he's cracked up to be, and that would be a real dumpster fire for us. But I overall, I think the scheme that Kubiak brings will help the offensive line. I think running the ball more instead of putting so much pressure on pass protection is going to help as well. I think getting fullbacks and tight ends into play and to blocking as well is going to be a huge win. There's a lot of things that I think could improve this team, overall with the offensive line. So sorry, I just got distracted by Big Mike. Mason Richmond was the guy I was thinking of from Iowa. Thank you. What? I knew we got one from Iowa.
Yeah, I just like the fact we got a guy from Iowa. Like Iowa took linemen in. Yeah, they do. Like, get this guy. I want to see this guy in training camp. I want Curtis to be down there telling me that he looks good. And in fact, he doesn't have to look good. Just looks like he can do a job. That'll be fine because that's what Iowa linemen tend to do. Glenn says, "Would we still consider looking for a nose tackle?" I mean, I think the fact they've signed Jonathan Hankins suggests that search is probably been pushed into next year. So I would suspect not. You do you go along with that, fellas? I wouldn't feel the need to go and get another nose tackle now. It's just a 1 or 2 down position, and I think Jonathan Hankins signing is probably indicative of them sort of kicking the can down the road there. Albert says, can I get a shout out for my cousin Sierra Sacco, just named consensus All-American center fielder for Mississippi State and drafted 5th overall by the Talons of the AUSL, number 21, just like Spoon. Albert is a big part of the community, and as you can see in his avatar there, he is wearing a Seahawks Draft Log t-shirt. And he often updates us on his cousin Sierra. And Albert, fantastic. Please do keep keeping us up to date with that. Congratulations to Sierra. I think he often complains though that she's just got engaged to a kicker at Mississippi. The kicker, is it the kicker at Mississippi State, Albert, that she has become engaged to? And he says, of all the players to get engaged to, a kicker is not the one. But if it's a good kicker, it can be a long career. It can be a long, old and productive and financially viable kicker. So there we go. He says, yes, it is. It is the kicker at Mississippi State who should become engaged to. Well, congratulations for that, and congratulations to her for being drafted and everything to do with that. So there we go. So we've done about 55 minutes, guys. I think it's I can't wait for the season to come around. So over here, as Adam will attest, like the English football season is now over, there is not a men's tournament this summer. So I have nothing to look forward to in a sport, apart from a bit of cricket with England playing against India. There's not much going on, is there, Adam? So, Robbie, you're a Mariners fan?
I am.
They're hit and miss, though, aren't they?
Hey, they're in first right now.
Are they? Are they still
Yeah.
in first?
Yeah. I think they may be tied now with the Astros, who are the worst team ever. I hate them more than anybody, but whatever.
Well, we're going to go to a Mariners game, aren't we, Robbie? We're going to go
We are.
to watch that.
Yeah.
We're going to watch the Mariners play after the Niners game in
That's
week
right.
1. So
Yeah.
we look forward to that. But Adam, have you got much planned for this summer? No, without any sport withdrawal symptoms, apart from sort of seeing what's going to happen with Spurs manager over the next few days?
I was going to say, I mean, my summer will largely be spent reveling in Tottenham finally getting over the line and winning a trophy after 17 years. And I kind of wanted to make that sort of like a PSA to Seattle fans who also, let's be honest, it's been a little bit of a while since we were at the pinnacle of the sport. And I think it took Tottenham a long time to win something. And I had started guarding myself against the importance of winning and putting a lot of focus on, if we just keep getting better every year and better every year and put ourselves in a position to win, then that's almost good enough. And, progress. Having actually experienced what I got to a couple of weeks ago with my dad and my mates and stuff, I just want to remind everyone, like, winning is just brilliant and absolutely everything. And I would implore people to demand that we start winning again, because I'm currently at the top of the mountain and looking around and enjoying the views from all over the place. I didn't get a chance to enjoy it enough. I don't think when the Seahawks won their Super Bowl, you're worrying about what's next and what's coming. But, having had the joy of winning, I just want people to remember, that is the point of the sport. And we can talk about progress and, 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line. Let's start demanding that we start winning again soon, because it's been too long for this team. And it's about time we got back to winning. And I really hope that this is a year, or, that we start making proper strides towards that again, because we all deserve it. We bloody deserve it.
Well, it's a good point, because the number of teams that have been in the NFC Championship since Seattle was last there is quite high. Like Seattle, I think, are about one of, 3 teams who haven't been in the NFC Championship game since the Seahawks last were in the 2014 season. So they're due to, at the very least, have a run which gets them to that game with a chance to make the Super Bowl. And apart from that, this winning thing that Adam was talking about there, Robbie, I'm not familiar with it. Like the teams that I cover in my day job, they don't win. And then England don't win, and the Seahawks win a bit. But as he says there, it would be nice to see them, and it would be nice to see a fan base that raise their expectations now of wanting to see this team back in the big games, not just to squeak into the playoffs. To legitimately get into a point where you are competing to be a top seed in the NFC. And why can't they? There is no Mahomes in the NFC. Burrow's not in the NFC. Josh Allen's not in the NFC. There's no reason why you can't compete to make a Super Bowl and then, as this Eagles showed in a one-off game, beat Patrick Mahomes. That's not impossible. The Niners nearly did it twice. So, there's opportunities there, isn't there? And it will be nice to see this sort of team take a step forwards now.
Yeah. Winning is everything, and that's all we want. As a sports fan, being from Seattle, I am a Mariners fan. I'm a Seahawks fan. We got the Storm, who I obviously would be a fan of as well, and they've won quite a few. To give credit to them, the last time they won was like in 2021 or 2020. But being out here in Indianapolis, I will just say, we've got the Pacers, and since my beloved Seattle Supersonics are no longer a team, I now am I'm a Pacers fan right now, and we just made the NBA championship. So I might actually try to go to one of these games and see what it's like. I haven't been.
Can I? Because I know nothing about basketball, really.
Yeah.
The Pacers, have they got a chance?
Sure, they made it to the championship. They get best of 7.
I was hoping you, because I watched the Sonics once.
Yeah.
It cost me $10, and it was right before they left. And I couldn't believe there was nobody there. We couldn't believe how cheap it was, how easy it was to get tickets, and there was nobody there. And, I don't have the sort of anger that many in Seattle will have about the Sonics leaving. But I do like everybody else, root against the Thunder.
Yep.
And when I asked you that question, Robbie, I was hoping you would go, of course. They've definitely got a chance of winning. But no, everyone seems to just think that the Thunder's has got it in the bag.
I don't know about that. I don't watch it enough to know. I checked out after the Sonics left. So I root against the Thunder as much as possible. That's about as much as I can do. But I don't like, you can't eat like players. I don't know. I mean, I barely know anybody anymore, so not the right guy to ask. But I may go check out a game.
Well, should cheer for the Pacers, Robbie.
Oh,
like your life depends on it. Do you know what'd be great? You should go to if you've got any Sonics gear. You could wear it.
Yeah.
You could wear it to the game. You'd get on the TV. The camera would find you and go, "Look at this guy."
Yeah. Maybe I'll wear a Pacers jersey and a Seahawks hat. There you go. Or a Sonics hat.
I want to see a picture of you plastered all over social media as a new meme when the Pacers win the game that you're at and you've got the Sonics gear on, Robbie. You'll be famous.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to seeing that. And guys, look, appreciate your time. I know there's not a lot going on, but it is nice to sort of check in every now and again and just talk a bit of Seahawks. So really appreciate that. Big thank you to Adam. Big thank you to Robbie. Big thank you to all of you in the comments and for the live views, which was really good, despite the fact it's June the 1st. There's not a lot going on. Thank you for the super chats. We will be back soon. And if there's anything going on, we will jump on, but we will try and get back on a stream in the near future. Until next time, bye for now.